What if you could guarantee that tomorrow would be better than today? That the work you're doing will have an impact, not just in this moment or in this year, but a true and lasting legacy of positive change? What if you had the ability to inspire those around you to make the world a better place, to right the wrongs, to address injustice, and to celebrate and amplify the good that happens every day? There are millions of people who want to be part of change, but just haven't been asked. They're out there. We're sure of it. How does it feel to make a gift that changes the world? Well, magical. We're building technology to help donors support the organizations that they love the most. Whether you give a little or you give a lot, your impact is felt. And together, we can make tomorrow better than today. We're version 2, and we're reinventing technology that reimagines what's possible in fundraising.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Alumless. Thank you so much for listening. Today is Friday the 19th, 2026. This is Designing the Conditions for Excellence edition. I'm Ryan Catherwood. I am joined, as always, by CMAC founder and CEO, Chris Marshall. What's going on, man?
Hey, Ryan, how are you? I know this is July 19th when people are listening to it, but we're recording it in advance on July 11th, which is birthday eve for Ryan Catherwood. So happy birthday eve, Ryan.
Wait, it's your birthday today, isn't it? Today is your birthday?
2 days ago.
Or yesterday?
2 days ago.
God, I'm so bad with birthdays. You're so much better at birthdays than I am. I know you also really don't like people remembering your birthday.
I hate it.
I know this.
I hate it.
Happy birthday to the both of us, I guess.
There you go.
It's good to see you on the show. We talk about alumni and constituent engagement strategies and education advancement, and we are pre-recorded today. But do say hello in the comments section on LinkedIn. We love answering your comments. If we cannot answer your comment because we're not live, we will definitely do so in that LinkedIn comment section. We're grateful for everyone listening by podcast and the teams at Protopia, Alumni Q, Richmond Associates, and Givesy for being our presenting sponsors. So, Chris, interesting topic for today, designing the conditions for excellence. I really liked how we were able to frame this episode with Shara today. But talk a little bit about when you hear a phrase like designing conditions for excellence, what does that bring up for you? What separates a team that just runs programs from one that's built to do great work?
Yeah. Well, kudos to Shara for her ideating on this and coming back with a really cool title for us. So I'll give her full credit.
Yeah. Shara Freeman Hoefel is our guest today. She is Assistant Vice Chancellor for Alumni Relations at University of California, San Diego. We will bring her out in just a second.
Yeah. The words I think of are innovation, agile or agility, modern, and no fear of failure in that kind of context where you're encouraged to take risks and experiment. And what I like to say is, and I banned this phrase from use at both my stops at Lehigh and Cornell, well, we've always done it that way, is something you can never say in this kind of environment because you have to be constantly looking at if it's the right way, then great. But if it's always the way, it's not always the right way. It's probably not the right thing to keep doing at the end of the day.
Yeah. And there is a balance too, isn't there, between an iterative process, prototyping, like we always do this, a marshmallow challenge, when we're doing our workshops with folks and learning about prototyping. So evolving is really important in experimenting, but then you don't want to just do it for change's sake all the time. There's got to be sort of intentionality behind it. Why is it so hard for advancement shops to do this, to step back and design the conditions that we've been discussing instead of kind of reacting to the next event on the calendar?
Yeah, you and I both have discovered this. We look under the hood at the average alumni program around our country. The typical associate or assistant director level roles are executing. They're going from event to event, get that email out, boards coming in, event. It's a sequence of stuff, and they're very tactical in the work they're doing. And they're often, well-intentioned and talented people, but they don't have time to be strategic because they're constantly acting on the to-do list. And I think, shifting from a tactical mindset to a strategic mindset is one piece on there that's hard for folks to do because we're entrenched in the work and we have traditions that we have to uphold. In many cases, we've been doing these things for many, many years, and to stop something is really hard in our industry because somebody owns it. Somebody's going to care about it. Somebody's baby, if you will. And when you stop something like that, someone's going to complain. You got to have all your ducks in a row to make those changes. But those are the things that are on my mind when it comes to this topic.
Yeah. Those are all good. And some of the other things that popped into my mind when we were thinking about this topic were the idea of talent development, thinking about how the growth of your staff is part of designing the conditions for excellence. I think, great management, flexibility, quality of life, a focus on meeting your team where they are and being empathetic while still being consistent. Another way to set up the conditions for excellence is, being thoughtful and empathetic. But let's bring out our special guest today. Shara Freeman Hoefel is the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Alumni Relations at the University of California, San Diego. Hey, Shara, how are you? It's so good to see you.
Hi, Ryan. Hi, Chris. Thanks so much for having me, and happy birthday to both of you.
Isn't it funny how we just sort of nonchalantly rolled into, it's both of our birthdays, like literally right now, and we didn't really
this was a big one for me. I turned 60 the other day, so I'm 60. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, that's a big milestone. It's a big milestone. Well, hopefully you had a fabulous celebration, and Ryan, hopefully you have a fabulous celebration.
Yeah,
I'm going to spend the day driving down 95 South, but it will be nice when I finally get there. But Shara, let's talk about designing the conditions for excellence. Set the stage for us. What does that phrase mean to you, and what made you start thinking about your work that way?
Yeah, I appreciated hearing your thoughts on what designing conditions for excellence is. Really, the way I think about excellence is there's no limit to better. And it's a mindset that we have. And so I really take a lot of my learning and innovation from the hospitality industry. And I love Horst Schulze. He was the founder and CEO of the Ritz-Carlton hotels. And he talks about two main things you need for excellence: purpose and process. And when I think about purpose, what comes up for me is really what he says in his line of work. And he started this phrase when he was 16 years old. And it was ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And what I love about that phrase is he created a relationship of equals in a service business. And so when I was stepping back into the alumni relations world after being really in independent schools for a long time, I thought about how do I take that servant leadership model and take that purpose and apply it to our work today? And I thought about alumni serving alumni. And what that means for us is that, hey, we are alumni. And what does it mean to be an alumnus? It comes from the root of alere, and alere is to be nourished. And so we are people who have been nourished, serving those who have also been nourished. So it doesn't matter that I didn't go to UC San Diego. I've had an alumni experience, and so I know what that feels like. And I am an alum serving alums. And why I love that is it's a reciprocal relationship. It's not transactional. And so I take that, so that's my purpose, alumni serving alumni, and I look at process. And again, looking at hospitality and the Ritz-Carlton, he has a 20-point plan that I'm not sure if they use it anymore, but one of the 20 points that he says in his process, so you repeat every 20 days, you repeat, you go back to one, is don't point, walk them. And I love that because it's the whole philosophy of when someone asks you for directions, when somebody asks you for help, stop what you're doing and take them there. Because during that time that you're walking them, you're asking them, how's your stay? How is it going? And so I use that process, and there's process for everything. So you can take that and put it into your shop and say, what are our processes to ensure that we are building connection with alumni around this purpose of alumni serving alumni? And then we get to this mindset of there's no limit to our better.
I think what you're pointing towards is the notion of building a stronger connection and really developing relationships authentically with alumni, between alumni. One of the ideas we were discussing in advance of the show today was the idea of unreasonable hospitality, which comes from a book, right? An excellent book that I was thinking about recently, had recommended to me. I think you'll probably share about it, but talk about unreasonable hospitality. What does that look like in practice? And for an alumni team, what changed once you started thinking about your team and your work that way.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I love Will Guidara. He wrote Unreasonable Hospitality. I recommend you all read it or listen to a podcast. He has a great one with Simon Sinek about it. But Unreasonable Hospitality is all about how do we create conditions for connection. And he has this phrase, which I love, is one size fits one. Ask yourself, what are the recurring moments in our work and how do we address them in a more thoughtful, unreasonable way so that everyone feels that they have been seen and connected? And so I really think about that all the time in our work because there's so much repetition. I mean, you started with like, we've always done it this way. We've always done events. We've always done it this way. Okay, well, for whatever, keep that saying where it is. There's a lot of things we've been doing for a long time. So how can we think about it more unreasonably? And so I thought of really 3 examples and I asked the team, what are some of the things you're doing all the time? I'm always having Zoom meetings. So what I do is, and someone gave a suggestion, I love it, that before they meet with an alumnus, they go back and they understand their experience. Were they an athlete? What college were they in? What was something they were involved in when they were at school? And they change their Zoom background to show a picture of what it looks like today, to show a picture of what is happening in that area. And it's a moment of connection. So the first thing you're doing is recognizing that you are seeing that person. And they do that every time they meet with someone. Another example, which I love to do, is we always have photographers at our events. And so people never print pictures anymore. So I love to get pictures printed and I love a handwritten note. And I print pictures where people look fabulous. Some of them are candids. And I think put them on your refrigerator. Kids never have physical pictures of you, especially as we talked about family, spending time with family. And I write a note, and it's usually one sentence. You look fabulous. I loved seeing you. Can't wait to see you again. It's just like, really clear. And I send those pictures. If I don't have time to do that, I challenge myself after every event to find 10 photos and send 10 photos to people. And I usually clip it and put it in the email and say, in the subject, you are amazing. And I make a little note of how fabulous it was to connect. And because I'm always hiring a photographer, so how am I using that information? And I would say like my last example is the check-in process. And actually, this is what Will Guidara talked about. He said the first thing that happens when you walk into one of our restaurants is you're met with a podium. You don't have an interaction between a person. So how do I remove that physical barrier and create connection? And so I know our check-in process, all of us do events and we have so much equipment. There's so much we have to do in that 2 minutes exchange. But I believe I am the wayfinding greeter. I take myself outside. I take myself 10 feet in front of that check-in table, and I am the person that greets them. I remove the barrier by making myself more upfront. And I love that job for myself. So I assign myself that job for every event that we have.
There's about 12 great takeaways that you shared in the opening 5 minutes here, Shara. So I hope our audience, we'll promote this broadly, but I'll tell lots of people to listen to this. Just listen to the first 10 minutes. You'll get a ton of tips. I love the way you're thinking about it and the depth in which you're connecting with people. I worry for you about burnout of doing that all the time, nonstop is probably, but I bet you're an extrovert.
How do you know that? I actually joke I'm an introvert, but I will tell you, well, we have a Cornell connection and I played Division I sports and I have this deep discipline and hard work ethic. And I balance that with, I believe I'm a servant leader and I show up to this work because I'm here to serve and I serve a bigger mission than myself. And I get a lot of great feeling from this work that I do. So that's how I balance it.
That's amazing. How long have you been in the role?
In this role, a year.
So I want to come back to where you were headed with Ryan and share this. I also am aware that you're really serious about the measurement of our work and using the case framework. And whenever I'm talking about, I get really nerdy about numbers and data because I coached swimming for 12 years and we measured everything. And when you get down this rabbit hole of measurement, I stop myself and I say, at the end of the day, this is all about relationships with people. You got to keep that in mind. How do you reconcile those two things? Because you're serious about the data, but how does that translate to making sure that we treat people well and that they're a human in the equation?
I'm so glad you brought that up because I have my master's in sports psychology. So Obviously we look at performance, but there's a human and there's a mind behind all of that. So how do we get people to perform? It's to know them deeply and to understand them. So I really appreciate you sharing that about yourself. Well, first I want to shout out to our case colleagues and the case insights team. I think they're brilliant. I think the work that they do is really valuable to us. So I just really want to shout them out. So let's define the human side. And I think it really comes down to mattering. And Jennifer Wallace has a great book about mattering. I encourage all of you to read it or listen to a podcast with her. But she defines mattering. She takes a lot of what Will Guidara says, and I don't think she does this purposely, but to feel seen and valued. I feel seen and valued. But this is what mattering is. And I am depended on. People count on me to show up. I love that because we want to make sure that we are not just counting heads, we are making heads count. Case says this all the time. They say, listen, we're not counting, we're measuring. And it's such a slight difference. And I get where they're going with that because it's like, no, listen, we understand this is a human contact sport. We didn't lose that in the numbers. So let me give you an example of where I know I have to stay focused on the human side, because the way the case data works is 2 data points are equal. 1 email communication is 1 point, and having a person show up to one event is 1 point. Yep. They are not equal when it comes down to engagement. There's a big weighted difference there. And I tell the story. So every time I present the case data and I present it to the board, and I say, you need to hold me accountable to these numbers. These are our numbers. And this is, in 2 years, if you don't see change in these numbers, you have to ask me why. And I use a story of when I first had started, it was July 3rd. I was 2 months in. I get a text from an alumnus. He was on campus. He got my number from a board member. And he said, my family's here. I would just love to say hi. And so I run outside and I meet him. And he has his aunt from India. He has his mom and dad, and they're wearing the UC San Diego mom hat and UC San Diego dad hat. He has his sister who went to UC San Diego and her fresh baby. He's got his girlfriend and the dog. I mean, it is like a family moment. For 10 minutes, his parents bragged about how fabulous their kids were. And I know those parents. I have them. And it was an amazing story of how wonderful this family was, but that they had taken their aunt who had never been to UC San Diego, who was here visiting for 2 months. They all met here, all from, the kids aren't living here anymore, to take her to campus, to show her what their college experience was. That is 1 data point on the case metric equal to an opening an email, but it is not equal. So those are the things, like, I have to tell that story when I'm presenting the data, because that is the human side. So I would take 40 of those over 1,000 communication data points.
Yeah.
And so that's the story you have to present at the same time you talk about the case metrics.
Yeah, I've been involved with the case stuff for a long time. And I think that, as Ryan just said, it's a breadth measurement is how case is set up. And we actually talked about setting up a depth measurement. But when you get into those, they're so dependent on the institution and the culture evolutionary. Have you guys played around with trying to measure weighting any of the behaviors? Is that on your radar to do yet or not yet?
No, and I'm asking whoever's listening who, is a data quant, like, please help us get there.
There are several schools out there that are doing a model that are weighting. It's I've seen 5-point scales, I've seen 20, 100, 1,000-point scales, and they're all, varying levels of complexity. So happy to talk with you about this, Shara, when the time comes. But we do have a product that we do within CMAC that does exactly this. So we'll talk more. I want to keep on our script a little bit and get into AI, because when you get into scaling the work, you talk about, human, that interaction you had for 10 minutes with that family, counting clicks, and then using machines to count clicks, right? There's a whole nother layer of informality there that comes into it. How are you thinking about using AI in this whole system?
I heard this at a case conference maybe a couple of years ago, and it was from a colleague at Give Campus. Another shout out to Give Campus, another great company. They said AI isn't coming for your job. Someone who knows AI is. And I took that to heart, and I said, gosh, I need to understand AI. And how is it going to elevate our work? And I think it comes down to the scale. Like, I can't be here every July 3rd to meet every family that shows up, but I have to understand where, like you talked about burnout, where do I use all that relationship building time, my social capital, and where do I scale with AI? And I think where I will tell you where we're spending a lot of time in our business. I'll give you a real life example. We offer an email service to alumni. You can sign up for an email service. And if you go to our website, you fill out a form, and the email that comes back says, give us 10 to 15 days and we're going to send you an email. First of all, going back to excellence, that's a terrible process. Yeah. 10 to 15 business days. Absolutely not. Because I need someone to come into the office, check that email inbox, fill out a form with IT, send an email to IT, then wait for the IT to give them the email, to send the email back to the alumnus that email is open. that is a perfect example where, hold me to my word, the next time you all see me in person, we're going to automate that whole process. We're going to put in an, N8N integration, and that's going to lay on top of our CRM. It's going to lay on top of IT services. So within 2 seconds, you will be able to get your email. And to me, like, I've just reduced a whole student worker, and I can elevate them to something else. I've just created a frictionless process for somebody who was like, it already took me, 4 minutes to fill out your form. Now I've got to wait 15 days.
Yeah.
So there's so much opportunity in our job, and we absolutely have to think about where then do we take that social capital and reinvest it in our work. And I really encourage people to start thinking about how does AI elevate areas where we can scale.
I think you're exactly right. And I look forward to watching Chris Marshall try to build his own AI agent sometime soon, because Lord knows getting him to use the shared drive is tough, but it's going to be a fun future for all of us as our leaders look to adopt AI at the level of use where you can really have it knocking out tasks for you all the time. All right, let's take a quick break and we'll be back with Shara in just a few moments.
Meet Alumni Q, the only all-in-one platform built exclusively for higher education. From everyday events and email outreach to online giving, directories, membership management, and seamless integrations, Alumni Q helps institutions connect, engage, and inspire. Handling major reunions or homecomings? Alumni Q's signature events service has you covered with rules-based registration, name tag printing, real-time reporting, and giving integration. Visit alumniq.com to request a demo and start making meaningful connections today.
We are back with Shara Freeman Hoefel from the University of California, San Diego. There's a real pressure, I think, Shara, to perform inside lifelong engagement models. This is sort of thinking about how you're using those metrics that you've been working towards to design program strategies that reach different populations. Talk about the long view that you have here of relationships measured through decades and the pressure to show results immediately.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much in that question. And I'll just start with, in difficult pressure moments, we don't rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our training. I think that's really important to understand, because as we have university pressure to perform, to show metrics, to show ROI, we have a training, especially myself. I grew up in the regional model. I worked in a regional office. I supported regional clubs. The level of my training is very long game view. And I'll tell the story of Bill Vanneman, class of 31. I met him in his 90s. I was covering the Northeast. This was my Cape Cod region. So the demographics skewed to an older generation. Every 4 months, we would have a luncheon at Bill's retirement community. So the formula was this: we'd have lunch, we'd have a speaker, usually a local speaker from usually doing something in marine sciences, but sometimes we'd get a faculty member. We'd have a fabulous chicken lunch, and by 1 o'clock, when the speaker would get up, half the room would be asleep. And you could. This was dependable, and you knew what you were getting. But what was fabulous?
I know Bill Vanneman, and I knew that lunch. So yeah.
Yeah, so this is what happened. But what was great about it is I saw Bill at his chapter 99. He lived until 102, and if I was manufacturing pressure, if I was a young, person that was like, I got to get Bill Vanneman's gift, or I got to get him more involved, or I just saw that, I was there to manufacture this because I had to show numbers or I had to make things happen. I would have totally missed that, when alumni show up, and this is a lifelong relationship, only when they are ready and willing will things happen. And so I always talk about setting the table. So my long view is, you set the welcome table. Every graduation year, we have graduation this weekend. Every graduation year, I'm going to set 10,000 more seats at my welcome table. And when I do that, I'm saying, when you arrive, there will be a place for you at this table. The food will be warm. I will greet you like the family dog greets you. I will be so excited that you were here and you are willing to come and sit and have lunch with us. We can't wait to see you. And by keeping that long view, that's my training. And so I don't manufacture pressure, because there are so many alumni for us to work with. So if I let myself be bogged down by that pressure, I'm not going to have any fun when people get to my table.
Do you feel pressure from internal, a boss, a vice president, a board, on delivering on certain results in a more near term?
Absolutely. I would say like my internal pressure is probably the highest, right? I'm here to do a great job, but absolutely, we are a campus that there is no limit to our better. And I don't want to work in a place that doesn't have expectations.
Yeah.
That I wouldn't thrive there. I thrive in a place where people say, "What have you done for me lately?" And not everybody can withstand that type of pressure, but I'm not going to manufacture pressure in an alumni setting because I have training in this. I have Bill Vanneman to go back to.
So, well, how do you connect giving to belonging and seeing it as, part of the narrative that you're delivering to your team as you're building towards this model of setting up excellence? It feels like there's a lot of potential approaches to leaning in on a engagement with a development lens. How are you thinking about it?
So giving for me, let's call it philanthropy. Philanthropy is not an F word. It's not. And people treat it like it is. It's not an F word. And so I really start with understanding, like, I meet people all the time. Oh, I don't talk about giving. That's for somebody else. And I always teach this. The difference between good universities and great universities is philanthropy. Tuition set within the marketplace and will not distinguish one university from another. What distinguishes great universities is the availability of philanthropy, large endowments, research, and unrestricted funding. And when people understand that, they give with clarity and joy. And I fundamentally believe we're a great university. And if you look at our history, we're only, 65 years old. The ability for us to unlock philanthropy has totally changed this campus. I mean, over billions of dollars have been invested since our current chancellor has been here. And if you see it today, it's very different than it was 15 years ago. And so I fundamentally believe that giving is important. And so when I connect that to belonging, which is there's a place for me here, I see myself at this table, and mattering, which is you need me, you depend on me, I think that that's exactly where our alumni fit in. This is egalitarian. Giving's egalitarian. It doesn't matter how much you give. It's that you give. And the fact that it matters is absolutely we need you. I know all the data says alumni participation is decreasing. And not only is it decreasing, it's, much fewer people are giving more money. But we had just had this national alumni survey and it said, listen, people love your product. Alumni love your product. They don't like their experience. So if they don't like our experience, we all have all these things working against us. So I can't work against this headwind, just me. But what I can say is if we in this profession understand that this is not a transactional relationship, this is giving to your alma mater is the least transactional of them all. This is a way to feel like you have a place here, we depend on you, and that we see you for whatever you do for us, that it truly matters. That's how I see that relationship working.
I like the way you think about these topics. It's refreshing to hear. Ryan, why don't we wrap it up and we'll go to our break and come back and finish the second half of the conversation. But I know you're supposed to tee this off, but we're still working on our next guest. We're going to take a skip on the July 3rd date, which is our normal Friday we take off before the July 4th holiday, which means our next episode is July 17th. And the way I track it, Ryan, is that's our 100th episode. So you're 99, Shara, and 100th is coming up. Now, there's about 24 others that we've done in various forms and Ryan's put on, but the way I'm tracking it, it's 100th. So we won't share who the guest is yet, but we're coming back to you on July 17th with a special episode.
Right. So the 100th episode is the sort of the classic Alumless versus the other count, and it also includes Alumless takes and Alumless world, all sorts of Alumless. All right, we will take a quick break and we'll be back on the other side.